What's up, guys? I just wanted to do another DWAC. I know I've been doing a lot of them, but that's just because I'm like, what I do when I get into trading is when I find something that I want to trade, I try to focus a lot of my attention on just that stock. So I might look around and scope out the market and see if I find anything else. But during these times, especially when things are super volatile, it's kind of hard to try to put on 5, 10, 20 trades. Not only are you not focusing your attention as much on your specific trade, but you have more of a chance to lose your money because you're just not able to watch the price action move and this and that. So as you notice that I don't use any indicators, right? When I first started this channel, I was using Ichimoku Cloud, EMAs. I was using every, bunch of different indicators. But as I've progressed in my trading, I've been finding ways to just look at a chart, see the price action, look at the past historical levels, and try to decipher how this is going to play out, what could happen, just based off of different patterns that I see, or different levels that are getting reclaimed or rejected from, so on and so forth, right? So it's really cool. It's always been my dream when I watched other YouTube videos that, some people do, like naked charting, you could call it. And that to me was always super impressive. Well, I've been getting pretty decent at it. I'm not perfect, but, I learn my lessons, and I always have lessons. That's the thing. You can make as many mistakes as you want in the markets, but as long as you learn from them, that's the key. Don't keep doing the same thing over and over. Insanity. Don't be doing the same thing over and over expecting different results. So with that little thing in mind, we were talking about how we could see a nice move because we really needed to hold that support line, and we were hanging on it. And although things were starting to get a little sketchy as we were just slowly coming down and testing this 44 and kind of just bouncing here between a small range, we did end up starting to lift towards the close of yesterday, which was nice to see. However, when we were talking about the 15-minute rising wedge, and I was saying how we could have broke down from that, but I don't like to draw it, blah, blah, blah. Now we're starting to look at a 1-hour pattern, which looks like a rising wedge. Now you can see what I've been doing here. I know I have a couple lines here at the bottom, but the reason I say at the bottom is because, like we've talked about before, in my view, we are at the bottom of this, whether this is a large pattern or either way, we're at the lower support, which is right around 37.20, where we've never closed a candle body below, right? So if we just did this and dropped this right around, I would say roughly in this, let's just look. It's roughly around this 38 area. And that's going to bring me to something as well. If we did come up, we either, number one, broke through this 47.58, got a launch up to test this upper line, which I have drawn in here. Basically, if you looked, this doesn't look like anything on the daily. If we brought it down to like a 4-hour time frame, it'll show a little. Well, maybe I got it off of the hourly. I tried to get it off of the hourly. Yeah. So if we look at the hourly here, we could see this little bit of price action here. That was our last resistance. Boom, boom, boom. Drop. So I started from there, and I drew it to this wick here because we did powerhouse through this eventually after a lot of tests. So these two lines, in my view, are some downward sloping resistance that need to be watched. Right here, we chopped, couldn't break it. Huge dump. We came up, we chopped, we did break it, we slapped into this resistance, we couldn't hold this one as support, and then we back tested it, and then we dropped. So between this lower support line and this upper resistance line is huge. We could get rid of this line, and sometimes I do that where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to pull this trade all the way up here, but currently it is showing to potentially be a level that people are starting to sell. You can see these candles. So look at this one, was kind of sketchy to me when we launched up to that 47 or 46, whatever we hit, 46.58, And then we just sold off. And I was like, uh-oh, this candle does not look good. But we never broke the support, you can see. And I was talking about that yesterday. I'm not going to sell this thing unless we start breaking this support, closing below, maybe back test it, however it plays out. If we get a big red candle here and it closes an hourly below, I'm going to watch the next candle. If we come back, we start getting rejected by it, watch the next candle. If we can't get back up, I'm probably going to just cut it. Whether that's on the hourly or the 15-minute, I'm not sure how I would play that. But that's going to be my determined factor. And the reason I would cut it, because, you don't have to cut it potentially. But once you start breaking down, the downside is more inevitable, obviously. But the target of a rising wedge like this is the bottom of the wedge. So usually you would target the 43.05. However, sometimes when you're coming up on upper resistance like this, you can almost expect that if you're going to break down from it, whether you come down and then you come back up, retest it, and then come down, sometimes that happens. There's a lot of things that happen which takes a long time. Sometimes can take a really long time. But if we were to roll over from here, then most likely we would come back down and retest somewhere in this 38.30 to 38.80 area. So I'm not talking about this saying like I think today we're going to drop down that low, but I just want to put it out there as what am I looking at? Because when I'm in my trades, I'm not only thinking, oh, look at this pattern. I'm going to run this thing up. Huge W. It looks like a huge W. I'm running this thing all the way up to 70. That's not how I'll play it. I play it little by little, pattern by pattern. So right now, we're in a smaller rising wedge that might come up, test this 47, and it might start to fall. It could set something else up, continue to back test this pattern. Maybe it'll chop around and create a different pattern, but for right now, that's what I'm seeing. I might just stick to my gut with the $44 level. If we close below that 44, I might just get out. I don't have like a stop loss in place currently. Sometimes I will, but when I'm on a stock, watching it and watching it progress and keeping my eye on it, I usually do pretty well with managing my own risk based off of pattern closings and candle closings, so on and so forth. There's sometimes where you get screwed without the stop loss if it just decides to tank and you get nothing you could do about it. At that point you have to wait for a little bounce or look at the pattern and be like, all right, it's making continuation bear flags and it doesn't look like it has any momentum left, and I'm just going to have to cut it for a $100 loss. That happens, but not very often. Most of the time, when you lose a pattern, you have a pretty swift drop, and then you come back up and you test it, and then you look for that rejection. If it does, then you go, all right, I got to get out. But anyway, that's the bearish side. So now that we've covered that, that's just something to keep in mind. I'm watching this wedge, and as of right now, this support on the hourly, if the next hourly candle is roughly around that $45, we could probably put I'd like to probably put a support line from those two wicks there, because we can see that when we had this really volatile action where we bounced off of here, we ricocheted off of this upper resistance, and then the next candle we came back down to that same support and we ricocheted back up. This 44.87 area to me is going to have some confluence. So even if the next candle or the candle after, we did start wicking through, this might still be a level to watch as long as we start closing, we close that body above. But that's just to talk about there. So the main resistance here, I don't know if I mentioned it, is roughly, it depends on when we hit it. If we opened up and just shot right up, 47.30, 47.27, and obviously it continues to go down a little bit, but little by little as you progress in this wedge. If we can get a nice big push out of here, we're going to be looking for that $50 to $51 area. And, we see all these wicks over here as well. These wicks were all areas of resistance, and usually you want to target areas of resistance. So, obviously there's so many of them, we could just take the highest one and be like, I'm going to sell the highest one. But I like to try to find ones that line up more so with each other. So For me, I'm going to choose that one because you can see we had a wick there. We kind of almost hit it right there. We had a wick there, and it's not perfect. We had, some confluence here with candle bodies closing, just above them. You could even go off this flat one, but roughly in this range, we had way more confluence with wicks touching it. So you have more of a chance to get filled if you were to play a swing sell of some sort here. But right now, looking at it, even just with these lines that I just made, if I get rid of this bottom one, we'll just go off of these two yellow lines. We can see that previously, when we were in this support and resistance range, this is kind of where we bounced in between. So looking at this where it is right now, what are we noticing? We're noticing that we were bouncing here. We lost it. We had a big fall that we found support on this lower line. We came back up, chopped in here. We lost it. We fell down to this lower line. And now we're coming back up, and we're starting to reclaim it again. So sometimes that, as long as we can control that, can mean that we might be heading up to retest this line here. If we can't get on top of it, reclaim it, then we might bounce around in here a bit, or we might hit it and roll over and fall back down and find that support again, but that would ruin my W pattern idea, but we would still have this large symmetrical triangle. So anyway, I know I'm rambling, but I like to just I'm just going off the top of my head, thinking out loud, explaining everything the best I can, how I'm looking at things, and this is just kind of the stuff that I look for, and this is how I go without indicators. I could look at indicators, pull them all up right now, and be like, this is what's going to get rejected on this EMA because of this, but those start to confuse me more than anything, because sometimes they break through and sometimes they don't. So it's like, important ones definitely help on like weekly and daily time frames, but sometimes the smaller ones can just confuse you. So now, as far as like the RSI right now, we pretty much, I have this lower support drawn in pretty well. You can see we had tapped here, we tapped here, we tapped here, we tapped here. And then, this upper resistance line, I was going off of these. I think I talked about it yesterday. When we break through it, we come back, we try to back test it, we fail. We come up, we try to back test it, we use it as resistance, we fail. And right now, on the recent, it's not drawn, it didn't come down perfectly, but on the recent like pop up, we broke it, we got that spike, we came down, we didn't quite touch it, we came up, so we might come back down and possibly touch it again, which, if we were to look at that, it's hard to say where that would end up being. Maybe this 4487 area, that wouldn't be a bad thought. We'll have to see. But we're getting to a point right now where it's like we have to hold this 4487, and we could be coming up here to test this 4730, but we need to break that. And if we can break that, then we have another resistance to watch. So it's not like it's the easiest ride ever through here. But let's talk about some targets. So if we were to base this off of just this smaller, not including this here, and let's get rid of these, even though I'm going to leave the 4487 for my own memory. If we were to look at what the target is right there, if we do break to the upside and we do manage to break out of this 4730, and that doesn't mean break out of the 4730 and we're off to the races, because you can see here, we broke out of the 4730, we got rejected on that line, and then we came back to back test it and we failed. And then we use it as resistance. Otherwise, we use it as resistance. So we would need to see some price action, quite a bit of price action, roll on up, even if we hit that 50 on that first momentum, come back, potentially try to reclaim this in some way, and start seeing some noticeable areas. Now, they can have wicks that come back through and buy back up, so on and so forth. But you just need to continue to close bodies above, and then that might set us up for a larger trade. So that'll be stuff that I'll be watching over the next week or so, depending on how long this takes. If it even does break through, or if this rising wedge rolls over and we come back down here, then we'll have to be looking for some 38s, 39 areas. But this target of just this symmetrical triangle is the target of this width of the triangle. And then from the breakout point, wherever that ends up being, whether it's here or whether it ends up being way over here and we chop a bunch more, if we were to break out somewhere in the next, like, I don't know, few days or so, the overall target will be roughly $66. I like to look at previous consolidation and previous resistance, and we could see that our previous resistance point was roughly that 74, and also we had a big bounce over here at the 60.51. So up in those ranges are going to be my two biggest sell points if we did get some crazy momentum, and this does actually go as beautiful as I'm hoping it will. This box range is going to be very, very big, and it might even take a bit to get into it. Say we do have bullish price action. We tap this 54, we get rejected, we come back down, tap this 46, hang in the 46 for a bit, maybe even head back down to that 44, and then we head up. If we can break this 60, this is going to be big too. So that would be the next area. But I don't know. I hope you guys enjoy that I keep coming on here making DWAC videos. Hopefully no one's getting annoyed. I don't normally pay this much attention to DWAC. I've only traded DWAC once in my life with a break of like $70, and I ran it up to 90, and then I cut it. Something like that. It was like an old all-time high or something I was watching way back. And I think it had to do with, if we were to look at the break, was it this break? Yeah, it was something in this range right here. And I think it was right here. It came down. It was finding support here, somewhere in this range. Well, I was saying, if we were to break through the 74 area, we would definitely see ourselves fall to $100, is what my call was a while back. I didn't sell it at 100, but that was just strictly looking at like the previous wicks. We didn't have too much price action above, but it was showing me something. Anyway, I took that trade, and then I sold it because I was seeing a rising wedge, and I didn't short it, and I kind of wish that I did because I'll do both ways. But you can see we had a very clear rising support and a very clear rising resistance. You can see all those wicks as they tapped it. Each tap, rejection. Each tap, rejection. And this was getting very tight, and then finally it rolled. That was basically our signal. So looking here, on the 4 hour, we do have rising resistance. You can see it clearly on the wicks. And this is going to be something to watch. But we still have a little bit more time in here if we did work our way to the 747 area. But like I said, we have to wait and see how it's going to progress. If we got rid of the rising, we just put the rising resistance. I mean, we still have more time to potentially figure out what we're going to do here. But yeah, I'm just rambling at this point. This is probably way longer than I wanted it to be. That's all I got for you today. I hope you appreciated it. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe. Peace.